The Australian media, particularly that owned by Nine Entertainment, are great property boosters, using all sorts of practices to glamourise and encourage the buying and selling of houses. One they often use to imply that fabulous returns are available from housing is to cite, for illustration, that a house that was last sold in 1972 for $25,000 had traded again in 2022 for $4 million. That is 160 times the 1972 price. Superficially, this appears to be a fabulous return of $3.975 million and is almost certainly designed to reinforce the reader's often existing conviction that you can't go wrong with property. But this simplistic reporting doesn't enable you to make any assessment of the investment merits of residential housing versus alternative investments, such as the Australian share market. It's nothing like the true economic return received on owning the property. It takes no account of any costs associated with owning the property over the 50-year period between sales, including any buying and selling costs, improvements, maintenance, rates and insurance. On the benefit side, it also doesn't capture the notional rental return received by the owners. And even just allowing for the time value of money by calculating an implied compound annual growth rate on the sale price in 2022 compared with 1972, 160 times increase in price over 50 years yields a much less impressive 10.7% a year growth rate. In the rest of this video, we'll examine a particularly egregious recent example of this type of real estate media hyperbole that has the added dimension of celebrity involvement. Hi, I'm John Lesky, recently retired personal financial advisor and founder of FinHealth, a tool to guide you to your financial independence. Ray Martin sells Sunshine Coast holiday home for 10 times what he paid for it, was the headline that appeared in a recent article in the Domain section of the Sydney Morning Herald. It attracted my attention and, I assume, many others. What a great piece of clickbait. Well-known TV personality makes an apparent property killing, the real estate media's dream combination. I had to read on. Taking the article at face value, Martin apparently bought the Coolum land in 2001 for $250,000. He subsequently built a desirable residence on this land. He then sold the property, that is, house and land, in April 2022 for $2.65 million. The $2.65 million is a little more than 10 times the $250,000 cost of the land, and the apparent rationale for the article's headline. But hang on. By the description of the residence in the article, I expect it would have cost at least $1 million to build back in 2001. The article also states that the Martins made upgrades to the property in recent years. Let's assume this was $400,000 in 2019. Martin then would have also met ongoing outlays on the property for rates, potentially land tax, insurance and maintenance. Offsetting these costs was the notional rent received on the property. I'm guessing, but let's say this started at $25,000 a year in excess of outgoings after the first year, when building of the home would have occurred, and increasing at 3% a year. A final assumption I'll make is that selling costs were $50,000. The resulting total cash flows for the property are shown in the table on the screen now. As revealed, the compound annual return implied on these cash flows is 4.49% a year, well ahead of inflation, but a somewhat less sensational economic return than the article's headline, that is, 10 times what he paid for it, implies. On the assumption that the property was Martin's primary residence, this would also be his after-tax return. Over the near comparable 20-year period from June 2001 to June 2021, the Australian share market provided a total return of 8.39% a year pre-tax. That is, 3.9% a year more than the cash flows indicated for the Martins property. This return, less some small expenses, would have been available to any investor in a broadly diversified Australian share index tracking fund. The after-tax share market return would depend on how the investment was owned. See the tax effectiveness ratio for further discussion on this subject. While ordering the assumptions will change the compound annual growth rate, no feasible inputs are likely to result in the pre-tax return on the Coolum property exceeding that of the Australian share market for the relevant period. And that's despite the temporary severe negative hits of the global financial crisis and the COVID pandemic to the share market that occurred over this time. So, when considered as an investment, Ray Martin's apparent killing wasn't quite what the media headline would have led you to believe. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story and the implicit message that property is always a fabulous investment. But it's very likely Ray Martin never bought the Coolum property and built his desirable residence primarily as an investment. It was more likely, and as we believe it should be, a lifestyle decision. Just as his decision to sell was probably not based on a view that the Coolum market had peaked, but, as the article suggests, was motivated by a wish to spend more time with his family in Sydney. Your home is a lumpy, highly illiquid asset that doesn't meet the requirements of what we consider a good investment. See our article, Is Bitcoin a Good Investment?, for further discussion on this subject. In the FinHealth framework, your home is generally excluded from the investment wealth required for financial independence. It's considered a lifestyle asset that isn't expected to be sold to fund your desired lifestyle. Its purpose is to meet your family's accommodation needs rather than to make you rich. Succumbing to the real estate media hype and confusing the two often leads to poor decision making. Hopefully, you found this video of interest. I'd like to know what you think. Please provide any comments or questions below. And finally, thank you for watching.